I never thought a coffee run could make me want to throw my entire life into chaos. And yet, here he was leaning against the counter, the exact shade of storm in his eyes, the same curve of jaw that used to know every inch of me like a map I swore I'd burned. "Funny seeing you here," he said, his voice low, teasing, but not without a sting. I clenched the takeout cup in my hands so hard I thought it might shatter. It wasn't supposed to matter. I had moved one, or at least I told myself I had. That the nights spent whispering secrets, the mornings drenched in the quiet comfort of his presence, were just chapters closed. But life had a cruel sense of humor, and apparently it loved mirrors. I took a shaky breath, trying to navigate the cafeteria line without staring too hard. "Yeah," I managed, forcing a tight smile. "Coffee is universal, I guess." His lips twitched into a smirk, that same infuriating half-grin that could dismantle my carefully built walls. "Universal?" he repeated, echoing my tone, as if mocking me without trying. "Or maybe just inescapable. Some things, no matter how far you run, have a habit of following." My chest tightened. This wasn't just the familiarity of features I had once loved. It was the uncanny way he carried himself, alpha, dominant, magnetic, like he could pull me toward him without even reaching out. I wanted to turn and leave. I wanted to pretend I didn't feel the tremor in my gut at his proximity. But my feet betrayed me, carrying me closer. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate being cruel. Or maybe it was something darker, something addictive I didn't want to name. "You okay?" His tone softened, just slightly, the teasing giving way to a question that didn't sound rehearsed. I swallowed, tried to steady the heat rising in my chest. I could feel the past, all the broken promises and whispered lies, clawing its way back into the present. "Yeah," I said finally, voice firmer than I felt. "I'm fine." He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed, unrelenting, and I hated him for it. But beneath it all, I knew he had the same effect on me as always. A gravitational pull, impossible to resist. Over the next few days, the encounters multiplied, always coincidental, or at least staged to look that way. At the library, where I sought refuge among dusty shelves. At the corner diner, under the neon lights that made everything look warmer, softer. He was there, always, and each time, I felt the old ache of longing, fear, and anger tangled together like barbed wire around my chest. I avoided him when I could, but avoidance felt like a performance. My colleagues started noticing my distracted moods, the moments my eyes lingered on nothing in particular, the way my smile faltered when a memory struck. Finally, I confronted him one evening as the sun dipped low, bathing the street in amber. He was leaning against a lamppost, cigarette dangling from his lips, shadows deepening the planes of his face. "Why?" I demanded, my voice harsher than I intended. "Why are you following me? You know this isn't me anymore." He looked at me, eyes calm but unreadable, the smoke curling like a ribbon around us. "Maybe I don't want it to be someone else," he said, voice soft, but it hit me like a thunderclap. "Maybe I want the you I knew, the one I lost. Maybe I want you to remember us." I laughed, a humorless sound, the weight of old wounds pressing down. "Us? That's done. That's over." His expression didn't change, but the heat in his gaze made me shiver. "Is it? You say that, but your heart," he gestured vaguely at my chest. "It tells me differently. It remembers." I hated how true that was. I hated the way my chest ached, the way memories I had tried to bury so carefully resurfaced with alarming clarity. The stolen kisses, the way his hand fit mine like it belonged there. The nights spent tangled together in a mix of anger and desire that left no room for rational thought. "You're cruel," I whispered. He stepped closer, and I couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. Even from a distance, the intensity was unbearable, magnetic. "Maybe, but so are you," he said. "You left. You walked away. And now you act like none of it matters." We stood there in the dimming light, neither of us moving, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the mask. Not the one who looked like my ex, not the one who made me question everything, but the one who seemed tired, vulnerable in ways he never admitted. And suddenly, I realized how much I wanted to bridge the gap between us, not just to relive the past, but to fix the mistakes that haunted us. And so began the delicate, infuriating dance of proximity. He would show up in places I frequented, not enough to be invasive, but enough to remind me that he was still there. My emotions became a battlefield. Part of me wanting to push him away, another part aching to collapse into his arms, to let the pain dissolve into something tender, something human. One rainy evening, under the flickering lights of a downtown bus stop, our proximity became unavoidable. He was drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, jacket clinging to his frame. I was standing there, umbrella trembling in my grip, when he turned to me, wet eyes meeting mine. "Do you remember that night on the balcony?" he asked, voice trembling just enough to make my heart seize. I did. I remembered it too vividly. The fight, the laughter, the desperation. The kiss that should have ended everything but somehow made everything more complicated. "I remember," I said. He smiled, a fragile thing, breaking through the storm between us. "I've been trying to forget," he admitted. "But I can't. And I don't want to." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that the past couldn't come back, that we couldn't undo the hurt. But instead, my defenses crumbled. And when he leaned in, brushing a wet strand of hair from my face, I let him. Let him remind me of everything I had been running from. The city faded around us, the rain, the neon reflections, the distant hum of traffic. All that existed was the tension, the warmth, the ache that only we could understand. It wasn't easy. The days that followed were a series of tests, moments of laughter, arguments over nothing, silent understanding, and touches that lingered too long. We fought ghosts from the past while discovering a fragile, renewed intimacy. And slowly, painfully, I began to trust the possibility of something different, something hopeful. One night, on the rooftop of my apartment building, the wind tugging at our clothes, we sat side by side, the city lights sprawling endlessly below. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Every day. But maybe we can try again. Differently. Smarter. Without losing ourselves this time." He reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers like he never wanted to let go. "I'd like that," he whispered. "I'd like that more than anything." And for the first time in years, I let myself believe it. That love could be messy, painful, and complicated, and still, somehow, beautiful. The city around us glittered in quiet approval, and as he leaned his head against my shoulder, I felt the past finally loosen its grip, replaced by something warmer, softer, and undeniably ours. Days blurred into each other after that rooftop night. I had told myself that letting him close again was a gamble, but some part of me had always been addicted to the storm he brought with him. Every morning felt like a tightrope walk, wanting him desperately but terrified of the fall. He didn't make it easy. There was no grand apology, no heartfelt confession that healed old wounds in a single moment. Instead, there was persistence, patience wrapped in mischievous smiles, and the occasional sly comment that made my chest tighten for reasons I refused to admit. "Do you ever sleep?" I asked him one morning as we sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, steam curling from our mugs. He raised an eyebrow, smirking, eyes catching the early sunlight in a way that made me ache. "Do you?" I narrowed my eyes. "I barely have time. Work, life, therapy." I trailed off, letting the words hang. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, the air between us charged, unspoken words vibrating like electric current. "You make time for what matters," he said softly. "You made time for coffee with me, didn't you?" I hated him for how right he was. My pulse quickened despite myself. "That was accidental," I muttered, though my lips betrayed a tiny upward curve. He laughed quietly, warm and low, the kind of laugh that could undo years of careful restraint. "Sure, accidental. Like we keep bumping into each other in the strangest places. Coincidence has a funny way of working." The truth was, it wasn't coincidence at all. He had been deliberate, careful, but deliberate. And every calculated encounter tore at the fragile walls I'd built around my heart. A week later, he appeared at the local gym, where I went early to escape the noise of my apartment. He was on the treadmill, pretending to run, but I could see him watching me through the mirror. I stopped mid-stretch, tension coiling like a spring in my chest. "You're avoiding me," he said simply, not moving, not needing to. "I am not." I lied, my voice a little too sharp. "Sure," he said, stepping closer, towel draped over his shoulder. "You're just careful, watching, calculating, pretending you don't feel that pull." I didn't answer, because I did feel it. Every time he looked at me, the world narrowed, and all I could see was the boy I had loved and lost. The ghost of my ex now embodied in a man who had no right to unsettle me so thoroughly. The days became a mixture of moments. Quick touches, lingering looks, and the occasional flare of anger when the past collided with the present. He pushed boundaries I didn't want to cross, but I couldn't step back completely. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I didn't want to. One rainy evening, after a particularly tense day at work, I found myself walking the wet streets, my coat clinging to me as the city glistened under streetlights. And, as if scripted by fate, he appeared again. "You're walking like you're carrying the weight of the world," he said, falling into step beside me. "Want me to carry some of it?" I didn't look at him, focusing instead on the puddles beneath our feet. "You wouldn't understand," I muttered. He laughed softly, nudging my shoulder. "Try me. Maybe I'd surprise you." There was a pause, long and deliberate, where the rain fell in sheets around us, drumming on our coats and the pavement, a private world of sound and sensation that belonged only to us. And in that silence, I realized how much I had missed the simplicity of his presence, the comfort, the tension, the chaos he brought. "Do you remember that argument in the apartment?" I asked finally, voice low, almost swallowed by the rain. He flinched slightly, then nodded, eyes darkening with the memory. "Every word, every silence, every time you walked away." I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "I hated myself for leaving," I admitted, voice trembling. "And I hated you for staying. Or maybe for not stopping me sooner." He reached out, brushing his hand against mine without asking, letting his fingers linger in a gesture of unspoken forgiveness. "We were both wrong," he said gently. "But maybe we're allowed to be right now. Together. Somehow." That was a dangerous idea. Too tempting, too fragile. And yet, my fingers curled around his, not out of necessity, but because it felt like the only anchor I had in a world spinning too fast. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild what had been lost, or at least attempt to. It was messy, full of setbacks and arguments that threatened to undo us at every turn. But it was real, and it was ours. He was relentless in his pursuit, not of domination this time, but of understanding, connection, and tentative love. And slowly, the anger and pain that had once defined our relationship softened into something more complex. Longing, desire, and the comfort of knowing someone could see you, flaws and all, and still choose to stay. One evening, he showed up at my apartment with a small, ridiculous bouquet of wildflowers, drenched from the rain but grinning like a fool. "For the woman who can't say no to me," he teased. I rolled my eyes, trying not to smile, but I failed. "I'm a man, by the way," I said. He laughed, unabashed, brushing wet hair from his forehead. "Details, details," he said, stepping closer until I could feel the heat radiating off him. "It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?" I nodded, the weight of years pressing down. "Yes, too long." And yet, as I looked at him, I realized that the past no longer held power over me. It had shaped me, scarred me, and haunted me, but it hadn't defined me. And now, in the golden glow of the evening, I understood that love wasn't about perfection, it was about persistence, forgiveness, and choosing to stay despite the risks. That night, we sat on my balcony, the city lights sprawling endlessly before us, rain-slicked streets reflecting neon and gold. He leaned against me, shoulder to shoulder, fingers intertwined. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to relax completely, to breathe, to exist in a moment untainted by guilt or fear. "You think we can really make this work?" I asked softly, resting my head against his shoulder. He pressed his lips to my hair, a gentle affirmation. "I don't know," he admitted, voice quiet, "but I'm willing to try. With you." And that was enough. It didn't erase the past, didn't heal all wounds instantly, but it opened the door to something better. A future where we could confront our fears together, laugh at the absurdities of life, and rediscover the warmth we had once almost lost forever. In the days that followed, our lives intertwined more seamlessly. The coffee shop became our unofficial meeting spot, a place where smiles were easier and touches lingered without guilt. We went for walks in the park, under the soft glow of streetlights and autumn leaves, letting the rhythm of the city match the rhythm of our hearts. Friends noticed the softness in my eyes, the ease of his gestures, and some asked cautiously, aware of the complicated history that had preceded us. We didn't hide our past, but we also didn't dwell on it. Instead, we chose each day again and again to rewrite the narrative. Arguments still happened, of course. Misunderstandings flared, and tempers occasionally rose. But each time, the memory of pain that had once been unbearable became a reminder of how far we had come, how resilient we were when we chose to face the storm together. One quiet night, weeks after the rooftop revelation, he kissed me under a sky scattered with stars, a gentle, deliberate gesture that spoke of promises, trust, and a future rebuilt from fragments. "I love you," he whispered, not with arrogance, not with demand, but with the honesty of a man who had finally learned to hold his heart without fear. I smiled, tears threatening, laughter bubbling up despite myself. "I love you too," I admitted, voice breaking softly, carrying with it the weight of years and the lightness of newfound hope. And in that moment, standing together on the balcony, surrounded by the soft hum of the city, the past no longer haunted us. It lingered, yes, but like a shadow at sunset, elongated yet harmless, reminding us of where we had been and how far we had come. We had survived the storm. We had faced the echoes of old pain, and we had chosen each other. And that, I realized, was the truest kind of victory. Not the absence of struggle, but the courage to love despite it. Autumn had fully claimed the city, leaves carpeting the sidewalks in shades of gold, amber, and rust. The air carried the crisp bite of approaching winter, but it also carried a sense of renewal, of endings giving way to beginnings. Walking beside him, hand in hand, I felt it in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel for years. Grounded, present, and cautiously, beautifully happy. He glanced at me, eyes soft and teasing all at once. "You know," he began, lips curling, "I think we're finally getting this thing right." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Don't get cocky," I replied. But the truth was I believed him, believed us. Every argument we had weathered, every misunderstanding we had survived, had led us here to a fragile, yet undeniable harmony. We stopped near a bridge that overlooked the river, the water catching the dying light in sparkling ripples. He pulled me close, shoulders brushing, breath mingling with mine. "Remember the first time I kissed you?" he murmured, voice almost lost in the breeze. I smiled, the memory vivid as ever. The balcony, the rain, the tension and desire that had seemed impossible to reconcile. "How could I forget?" I said, leaning into him. "It ruined me, and somehow, it made me." He chuckled, brushing a wet strand of hair from my forehead. "I think it ruined both of us," he admitted, eyes glinting with mischief and warmth. "But look at us now." I turned to face him fully, cupping his face in my hands, tracing the sharp lines I had once memorized by heart, now softened by time and shared healing. "Yeah," I said softly, "look at us." For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future without the constant ache of the past pressing against my chest. We had been haunted, yes, by echoes of old pain, by the uncanny resemblance that had brought back memories of someone I had thought I'd left behind. But he wasn't that person. He was here, fully present, fully alive, and slowly, he had coaxed me back into believing that love could be gentle and sustaining, not just consuming and destructive. We spent the next few weeks carving out small routines that felt ours alone. Weekend coffee runs no longer carried tension but laughter. Evening walks became quiet confessions under the pale glow of streetlights. Even arguments, when they came, ended in gentle touches, reminders that connection was stronger than pride. One evening, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. The space was warm, cozy, filled with the soft scent of candles and the faint aroma of freshly cooked pasta. I watched him move through the kitchen, confident and focused, yet with a tenderness that had never been there in the past. "You're not too comfortable in your own kitchen," he teased as I hovered near the counter, pretending to help. I rolled my eyes, smiling despite myself. "I don't cook disasters that taste like cardboard on purpose," I replied. He laughed, the sound filling the small room, warm and infectious. Then he leaned closer, resting a hand lightly on my lower back. "You know, I've missed this. Even the silly, ridiculous parts." I felt my chest tighten, not with pain this time, but with the deep, grounding pull of affection. "I've missed it too," I admitted quietly, allowing the words to settle between us. Dinner passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and gentle teasing. Later, we moved to the couch, a blanket tossed over our laps as we watched the city lights flicker through the windows. He rested his head on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of his trust, his reliance, his quiet love pressing against my side. "You know," he said after a long pause, "I never stopped thinking about you, about us. Even when I was trying to move on, even when I told myself to forget, you were always there." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "I was scared," I admitted. "Scared of remembering too much, scared of being hurt again. But being with you now feels like home." He lifted his head to meet my gaze, eyes glimmering in the soft lamplight. "Home," he repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "I like that." Our lips met then, gentle at first, exploratory, and then with a growing intensity that spoke of all the things we had missed, all the years of longing and fear and unresolved emotion. Every kiss was a promise, a reassurance, a reclamation of something we had once lost but never truly let go of. Afterward, we held each other close, the world narrowing until there was only the quiet hum of the city outside and the steady rhythm of our breathing. "I think we can do this," I whispered against his hair. He kissed the top of my head, holding me tighter. "We already are," he said softly. Every day, weeks turned into months, and the fragile beginnings of our love grew stronger. We learned to navigate each other's boundaries, to laugh at our flaws, to cherish moments both ordinary and extraordinary. He was patient when I needed space, attentive when I needed closeness, and unwaveringly present in a way that healed the lingering shadows of the past. One afternoon, while walking along the riverfront, he stopped and pulled me into a quiet embrace. "Promise me something," he said, voice serious for the first time in days. "Anything," I replied instinctively. "Promise me that no matter what comes, we'll face it together, that we won't let fear or doubt tear us apart again." I held his face between my hands, looking deep into eyes that had haunted, hurt, and ultimately healed me. "I promise," I said firmly. "Together." He smiled, relief and love mingling in his expression, and pressed his forehead against mine. "Together," he echoed, as if sealing the vow between us and the city itself. The seasons changed again, snow blanketing the city in pristine white. We walked hand in hand, laughter echoing across quiet streets, hearts light with the knowledge that we had survived the past and were building something real, something lasting. It wasn't perfect. Love never was. But it was ours, and that made it worth every moment of pain we had endured, every tear shed, every night spent wondering if we would ever find each other again. One evening, under the golden glow of streetlights and the gentle fall of snowflakes, He leaned into me and whispered, "I love you. No shadows, no echoes, just us." And I smiled, heart full, knowing that for the first time in years, I could answer without fear, without hesitation. "I love you too. Only us." As we walked into the night, the city lights reflecting off the snow, I realized the past had shaped us. Yes, but it didn't define us. We were free to create a new story, one of tenderness, trust, and unwavering love, a story that was finally completely ours. We had weathered the storm, faced the ghosts, and chosen each other. And in that quiet, magical moment, everything that had once been lost was found again, not as a shadow, but as a light guiding us forward, together. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.